Servus and hello, Matthias here, and this is Singletrack. It's Thanksgiving week here in the US, and while most of y'all are stuffing yourself with turkey and pie, I'm bringing you a great conversation with no other than Terry Chiplin, running coach and founder and organizer of the US Trail Running Conference. The 2022 conference just concluded a few weeks ago in Mukilteo, Washington, and I was there, just half hour or so north of Seattle. So Terry and I have lots to talk about the show and the future of trail running and our larger community. But before we dive in, let me tell you about the sponsor of this week's episode. My favorite endurance fuel, Tailwind Nutrition, and sponsor of all the Rock Candy running races, is having a side-wide sale this weekend from the 25th to the 28th of November. Hurry on over to tailwindnutrition.com and stock up for the winter running season, or take advantage of the 20% off all products and get a head start on fueling right for the upcoming year. There are adventures to be had, mountains to climb, and races to run. Do it with Tailwind Nutrition. All right, now here's Terry Chiplin, who's calling in from England. Terry Chiplin, calling in from England. Where in England are you now?
I'm in a small town called Nailsworth. It's I like to call it my country retreat. And that Nailsworth, for those folks who have no idea where Nailsworth is in Gloucestershire, and that's in the west of England, kind of north of Bristol and Bath, and south of Birmingham. So not too far from the Welsh border, in an area called the Cotswolds, which is famous for kind of green rolling hills and trails too.
I was going to say trails too. I feel like the word Cotswolds connects me with trails. Is there a popular race over there, or is it just one of those like free form fell running routes? What is over there?
Yeah, so there's a big trail called the Cotswold Way, which runs north to south and on the Cotswolds, and I'm not sure if I'm sure there's plenty of races around here in this area. I'm not sure if there's a big race. There's certainly lots of big races further north and west and so on. But we've been here just over a week, so I'm still kind of finding out bits about the area. So there might be something here that I have no idea about yet that I'll find out.
So if you say no, you're not that familiar, that means you're new to that area. Your accent would make it sound like you're going back home, but you're new to that area?
Well, I actually have been. I've been to this area a couple of times before, but I don't know it that well. The reason we're actually here is because the best man from our wedding back in England in the year 2000, that it's his mother-in-law's house, and it's been vacant for over a year, and it just worked out, timing and stuff, and just kind of messaging and so on, that so we're renting his mother-in-law's house. It's helping he and his wife out, and it's also helping us out as well. So it just worked out really well.
So you went over there to flee the Colorado winter, because that's your usual home base here in the US, right?
It is. Well, we've kind of not just fled Colorado, we've fled the United States. So we're not going to set up home here. We're not exactly sure where we're going to set up home as yet, but possibility of the south of France. But we're going to start working on where that could be next year. But no, we've been in Colorado for 17 years now, up until the time we left at the end of October. But Colorado has been an amazing home for us. For anybody that has been there or lived there, then it's kind of been almost like a fairy tale, a dream come true. But unfortunately, our ability to stay there is not sustainable. And it's been really interesting, Matthias, because I have Sustainability has been really a kind of a key issue for me for at least the last, I would say, kind of 4 years or so. Just in thinking in terms of trail running, the trail running conference, the camps that we've been doing, but also my life as well. And it kind of got to a point where I realized that we can, yeah, that it wasn't sustainable to go on living in the United States. I mean, it's kind of a a long story, and I guess we've got plenty of time to talk about that as well. But yeah, my status, I was on a visa that allowed me to stay in the United States, and every 2 years I had to extend the visa. And then there's no guarantee that I was going to get the visa and be able to stay in the country. And so if you can imagine, I don't know if you've been in this situation yourself, Matthias, but if yeah, it's really tough being somebody who wants to be in that country, but yet you have to every 2 years, you're kind of like, please can I stay? Please can I stay? And they come back with a piece of paper that says yes, but they could also come back with a piece of paper that says no, and then then you have. Worst case scenario, you might have like a few weeks to leave the country and pack up your life and leave. And so we decided that it was much better for us to be in charge of when we left the country rather than be told when we have to leave. And so I will come, we will come back to the States, and I will come back each year for the trail running conference. And I know we're gonna talk about that as well. But yeah, yeah, so it's been, and also my status in the US did not allow me to leave the country and come back in again. So I haven't been back to England for nearly 17 years, and it really felt like it was time to come home. And for a variety of reasons, and we could talk about politics and and
I know,
yeah.
right? I feel like that's where I want to head down, but our listeners might be like, they're out on a run, and I'm like, no, please don't go there.
Yeah, midterm exhaustion or something, or whatever. Yeah, and not that the political situation in England is great. I'm, geez, it's there's it's actually tough yesterday. So I don't know if you saw in the news, but there was a young boy who died a couple of years ago now in a council run estate, I think it was, up further up north, and basically he died because there was mold in their living quarters, in their space, and he died from respiratory problems caused by this mold. And it's like, oh man, we shouldn't. People shouldn't have to live in those kind of situations, in this day and age. And so it's not perfect back here either. But this is where my family is. This is where we have a lot of friends, and yeah, I haven't. It's been wonderful to just go into like an English store. And see things that are on the shelf in an English store rather than an American store. And so it's been lovely being home, and yeah, we're just getting used to kind of settling in, being here. But yeah, it's certainly, and I've already had some great runs here. Really enjoyed. There's a big common area on top of a hill up here. And yeah, it's just been really nice. I mean, this morning it was kind of really misty. It was kind of one of those magical kind of mornings that I remember there being, many of in England at this time of year. And yeah, it was great to just be there and take our dog for a run with me, and just enjoy that dampness, which we didn't get a lot of in Colorado, of course. Yeah.
I think you found a really nice curve in your conversation, so we wouldn't get stuck talking about immigration politics. I have obviously a lot to talk about that too, but the reason why I have you on is not to talk about that, but because you're a runner, because you've been a lifelong runner,
yes,
and because you're so much more than a runner, and so we should be talking about it. I'm glad to hear that you are back in the I guess back in the country where you get to vote, right? I mean, talking about politics and change, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the difficult things. But let's talk about your
Yes.
running. You grew up in England.
Yes.
When did you, very briefly, right? I don't want to. Well, I don't know. Perhaps the story is interesting enough and we get stuck. But how did you discover running? Were you somebody who ran in school as a sport, or was it more of a late discovery for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I think we might push our hard stop, Matthias, here, but so so I feel like, I mean, my parents, bless them, they're no longer here to argue about this, but I kind of feel like I could possibly run before I could walk, and my life has been a bit like that to some extent ever since. That so I grew up, I just loved running everywhere. It was so as a young boy, before I went to school, then I'd be running around the garden, and then we lived in a suburb of London, and we had some kind of open space and parks around us, and I can remember just loving that feel of kind of we didn't. I would run mostly back when I was really younger, barefoot on grass. Um, and I still love that feeling. In fact, I thought of that today when I was on my run this morning. That I was, the grass was really wet, and I was thinking, you know what, next spring or early summer, I'm going to go for a run up here, and then as a cool down, I'm going to take my shoes and socks off, and I'm going to run barefoot in this grass across this common, and that's something I love doing. That feeling of just having, that tactile feeling. I mean, our feet are so incredibly, full of sensors and receptors and everything else. So we get to feel a lot through our feet. And of course, we spend so much of our time, especially when we're running, with shoes on. And so a lot of that is cut off, to some extent. And I just love that feeling of, it just takes me back to being a lad, just kicking off my shoes, taking my socks off and running barefoot on grass. So that's where I kind of started off my running life, if you like. And then I went to school, and we started doing, sports days and things. And basically from kind of the year, from being kind of 6, 7 years old to maybe about 15 years old, I won every race that I ever ran. Um, and it was just so much fun. I just used to love that. It was almost like I felt like a coiled up spring, that was just waiting to be released. And it's like, a clap would go or a gun would go off or whatever, and it's like boom, and off and running. And then I got to and I was running in senior school. Then I was running, so this was kind of age 11 upwards. I was running hundreds and 220s on the track. So this is yards now, not meters. Um, and I just loved it. It was like that feeling again, just being like released, and just kind of leaving everybody in my wake to some extent. And it was glorious feeling. But then once I got to kind of about 15 or so, I mean, you've met me as well, but for those folks listening in, I'll give you a quick description. I'm a lean dude. Um, and I got to about 15 or so, and the other guys around me were kind of developing these bigger muscles and power and stuff, and I'm still this lean dude. And so instead of winning races, I was coming in like second, third, fourth, and so on, and it was really, it really rocked my world in the sense that I used to write about running, I used to dream about running, and I wanted to be an Olympic sprinter, and then I was kind of watching my dream disappear before me, because it's like I can't keep up with these guys. These guys are big and muscular, and I'm lean and fast, but I haven't got a bunch of fast twitch muscles, and so it really kind of rocked me, and I left school, and I went to university, and at that point I kind of discovered sex and drugs and rock and roll, and I had 10 years kind of off the rails, And it was so sad because I really didn't know. I kind of lost my rudder. It was almost like I was just a person drifting through life, and had no direction. It's I was just kind of listless and unhappy, and felt like crap as well, and pretty unhealthy too. I mean, I was smoking a ton and doing lots of different drugs and things, and so it was not a good time in my life. But then I woke up about the age of 28 one morning, and I was like, if you carry on doing what you're doing, you're not going to have a healthy life. Kind of looking forward. So I was kind of like, where is this going to end? And so I just thought. I remember thinking to myself, what am I no longer doing that I used to be doing? That I used to enjoy. And the first thought that came into my head was running, and it was like, oh yeah. So I literally put on some trainers, went out the front door, and I can't remember how long I was out for, but I came back with blisters on my feet. And so I was obviously badly prepared, but but I also remember kind of thinking, oh yeah, this I remember what this feels like. This feels, just being able to run and being under my own power and everything just feels so good. It feels so liberating. It makes me feel alive. And and I call myself a born again runner. And that at the age of 28, I kind of discovered that I was an endurance runner, and I started studying physiology and things about sports and how to help myself train, and become a faster runner, better runner, and so on. And it was only then that I understood that that it wasn't. It wasn't that I was losing races because I didn't have ability or talent. It was because I was losing races because I wasn't playing to my strengths, and my strengths are as an endurance runner, not a power runner. But then, of course, that leg speed that I developed when I was younger really came in useful once I started doing endurance running. so hitting kind of 180 or 180 or more strikes per minute, in terms of cadence, was like that was simple. That was really easy for me. It didn't take any kind of effort or work to kind of hit that kind of cadence. And then a little bit further down the road, I also realized that my dream wasn't about winning, although it got caught up in that. But my dream was about running. Was about it wasn't the winning, it was the running, it was the experience, and sharing this with other people. And so I then became a running coach, and I did that pro bono in England, for a number of years, and then 2005, I decided that we were going to come out to Colorado, and I was going to build my life around running and coaching other runners, and that's what led us out to Colorado in 2006, and that's when we started Active at Altitude, which then became a running camp, for runners of all abilities at altitude in Colorado. Yeah, it's been. I must admit, I'm missing the mountains, Matthias. That there's no.
Mm-hmm. You summarized your story well, and clearly in the way you speak about running, it's clear that you're not just doing it for yourself. You found a way of speaking in a very inspirational way that that draws people in, that makes people want to join you on a run. And so it's sort of a logical conclusion for you to end up in a place where you actually build your career, your business, your life around inspiring other people to run. And that then puts our conversation that we had in the onset into a different perspective, because if you came to Colorado to build your professional life around running, you are now at a very crucial point, because you're sort of upending all of this.
I know. But the beauty of this is that, during the time that we were in Colorado, so one of the things I was doing was trail running camps, and these were co-ed trail running camps. And soon after we landed in Colorado, I met and I don't know if you know this guy, Adam Chase. He's the president of the American Traveling Association, and so I met him at the Estes Park Marathon in 2006, and so we got connected, and he actually came and helped me with coaching at a couple of camps that I did, and then he introduced me to his colleague Nancy Hobbs, who's the executive director of the American Traveling Association, and then I started including within the camps. We included everybody who came to one of our camps got a year's membership of the American Traveling Association. So we kind of started working in partnership, and then I had the opportunity to start up the US Trail Running Conference, which started in 2013. Although it was under a slightly different name then, we changed it in 2016 to the US Trail Running Conference, and then that has grown since then. So that has become a major part of my business. But the other thing that's happened is that with the people that we've had come to our camps, and then the people that I've worked with as their coach, and help them in terms of for achieving their goals and races and PRs and so on. Then I now have a database of 23,000 runners, and so wherever else I end up in the world, then I have I have a pretty active database, that whatever else we do, whatever else we set up, then we have I think continued business for a number of years in the future yet, and the other thing is that I'm approaching my 70s now, and so it's like I don't want to continue to work at the same level of intensity that I have, just like running, that I want to continue to run into my 80s or 90s, for as long as I can, and I still want to continue to work, but at the same time I'm going to have to. It makes sense to to just kind of throttle back a bit and have more time for myself as well. So in there somewhere, and then of course my wife and our dog and as well. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's been emotionally, it's been quite a roller coaster leaving Colorado, but we were so busy, and it's. For anybody listening in, I'm sure people have moved, from state to state, or, but if you're moving country to country internationally, then there's a lot of things to to check off before you can get on that plane or that boat or however you leave or land. So we've been really busy. So there hasn't been kind of much time to really stop and reflect. But I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to reflecting. We've had such an amazing journey, Matthias. I mean, I don't know if you share a similar kind of story. You kind of set out on an adventure with some ideas about what you want to do, who it is you want to connect with, what change you want to bring to people's lives, how you want to touch those people, but then the reality that you create. I think if you're following your passion, if you truly believe in what it is that you're doing, then the reality that you create is even better than the dreams that you've had. It just seems to be a kind of almost like a principle of just like gravity, or or yeah.
It's true. Reflecting backwards, you can see that you're somehow fulfilling your dream, but you're fulfilling sort of the underpinnings. You're fulfilling the philosophical components, even though sometimes the building blocks on the facade on the outside look entirely different than what you've always envisioned, right? You don't really know what it ends up being, but when you look back, you're like, well, actually, I've been moving in the right direction for the entire time, right? It's just
Absolutely. Yeah.
it just has looked completely different than I've always thought it would look like, right?
Yes, yes, I know. And of course, that there. I think we probably all had times or days when we're thinking, uh, am I making progress in this direction? And of course, that's it's sometimes difficult to kind of see the wood for the trees. Coming from coming from Colorado, where there were many 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 trees, then you can get kind of lost in the wilderness sometimes, and not necessarily feel that you're making progress. But then sometimes you have a breakthrough day, and it's like, oh man, it's like this is amazing. And yeah, I think I think we're so, I'm just so grateful, for the many many opportunities that I've had. We've had nearly 17 years, and they've been amazing years in Colorado. I remember when we bought our house in Estes Park, the first night we were there. I remember looking out of the window at the mountains around us, and watching the sun going down, and thinking, I'm at 8,200 feet above sea level here. And I was I remember thinking to myself that I've come from the British Isles, which is a beautiful country. We have some amazing mountains and hills to run for sure. But Ben Nevis is the tallest mountain in the British Isles, and I'm nearly at twice the elevation of Ben Nevis, and and I'm living here in my house. It's like nobody would live at the summit of Ben Nevis, any point in the year probably. And I remember thinking at that moment that it's like, this is mind blowing. This is incredible. I'm just an ordinary guy from England, from the south coast of England, lived in London, and here I am, in the mountains in Colorado, surrounded by all this nature, surrounded by this beauty. And then we got connected with our trail running community in the area, and then I got connected with the American Trail Running Association, and started up our camps, and I've shared time and ran some miles on the trails, with people like Joe Gray or Sage Canaday or Hillary Allen or Ali Mack, or it's and I mean just beyond wildest dreams, to get to hang out with some of these people and spend time with them, and is just just incredible. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities that we created. I mean, people have said that you're lucky. Well, I think to a large extent we often create our own luck, and be in the right place at the right time, and I've just had some amazing opportunities, and yes, somebody else that I didn't mention that comes to mind is our friend Melody Fairchild, and I don't know if you've heard her name as well, but she's been on the U.S. mountain running team. She runs she bless her, she's putting her energies into encouraging youth runners back in the Boulder area, but she's an amazing athlete, and just to spend time with some of these folks is just incredible. And and now we're planning another adventure, and that's going to be Europe based rather than US based, but I'm still planning to come back to the US and do at least the US Trail Running Conference every year for a number of years, and see where the next adventure takes us.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting time for you personally. Absolutely. I was just on a walk with my wife, and I was walking down along the port here in Olympia, which is the very southern tip of the Puget Sound. So it is saltwater. It belongs to the Pacific Ocean. And I was just this last week, I was telling her that it's crazy that I grew up in a small town outside of Stuttgart where there was no body of water. There was no river, no stream, no lake. The ocean, hundreds of miles away. And here I am living in Olympia, and on a regular walk a mile from my house, I can be right next to the water. It's incredible what we can experience in a lifetime if we open our eyes and if we create these opportunities for us, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think also open our hearts too, Matthias. That the ein when I it kind of broke my heart when I thought I wasn't, my life wasn't going to be based around running, as a young man, and then once I realized that my dreams were about running. Once I realized that, then it was like, how can I build my life around what I love doing, and then kind of putting your mind into it, but then once you connect with something that you're passionate about, then you put a whole lot more into it than than you would if it was just something that's just just something that's more than a hobby. It's and so I think there's once we connect with things that we're passionate about, then magic happens. There's an old Goethe. I think he was probably wasn't he a German philosopher? I think he was, wasn't he? Yeah. So he, I think this is correctly. I'm not sure if I got the right words right, but something like you make a decision about something, and providence moves. And so if you're making a decision about something that you're connected with passionately and have your heart invested in, then providence recognizes that this is this is something that's really important to you, and so providence creates all kinds of magical opportunities that we have no way of seeing or knowing or whatever. But it was really interesting before we came out to Colorado that I was working back in England. In my previous life, I was in the automotive industry, and I actually we came out. You mentioned Stuttgart, so I'm pretty sure Mercedes have a factory in Stuttgart, don't they?
Yeah, they have the headquarters there and a big factory just outside. Yeah.
So this is kind of sidetracking, but in my previous life, then I actually did one trip. We flew out to Stuttgart, was it? Did we land at Stuttgart? I can't remember if that was the airport or not. But anyway, we ended up at the Mercedes factory to pick up a brand new Mercedes, and it was such a surreal experience. So, bearing in mind, my wife and I are there, and we're going to drive the car out of the factory, and then across Germany, across France, Channel Tunnel back into England, and then drop it off in England. And it.
So you then picked up a Mercedes that had the steering wheel on the other side.
Actually, yes, it would have been. It would have
right.
It would have been an English Mercedes. So
right, yeah, exactly.
Had the steering wheel on the right hand side. Yes, it did. Yes,
adding to the surreal experience. Because driving through Europe, you're constantly on the wrong side.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Oh my God, what a memory. We're there at the factory, and it's an incredible experience. But they bring the car down this kind of ramp, and it's like, and it's presented to you, and you have a guy, immaculately presented, and he's got white gloves on. Kid you not, yeah, and so he hands over the car to you, and so he's checking around the car before he actually presents it to you, and he said, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Chiplin. There is a speck of dust on the bonnet here. I need to send the car back up to be cleaned again before we can let you drive it away." And I'm like, "No, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna drive it out the door here." And I think we had rain on the way back anyway. But anyway, that was a surreal experience. But yeah, in my previous life, then it was I felt it was oh yeah, I just I had um, I had lots of opportunities to kind of realize that life was giving me opportunities to learn things which would actually help me further down the road, but again, that I didn't know anything about at that point. So I learned about marketing, about sales, about customer relationships, and all these things, and all of that was really useful to me once I started my own business. So it was like it wasn't like it was a different kind of kettle of fish for me. It was something that I was kind of used to and was comfortable with, and but again, kind of following our dreams. That it's I just knew that I just knew that it was going to be. I trusted that whatever future lay in store for us, if we were moving towards it again with passion and heart and soul, then it was going to be something exciting. But before we left, then in the company that I was working for, then some of the people that were my colleagues were like, and I don't know if you've come across people like this. They were like, "What if it doesn't work? What if you fail? What if you can't get a visa?" Because I mean, that was something else. Was it was like I would be entering the country on the basis of hopefully being able to get a visa to enable me to stay and work and set up a business. And but again, there was no guarantees. And so, what if it doesn't work? What if you fail? What if you have to come back? But it was really interesting because those people that had that kind of perspective were also the people who would complain most about the workplace, the jobs, the people they were working with, and so on. And it really came home to me that that what I was hearing from them was not their fear for me; it was their fear for themselves. And it was what they were really saying was, I suppose in a roundabout way, is I'd love to be what you're doing. How can you help me get out of this rut that I'm in? How can you help me get out of this fear? How can you help me, live my life the way that I want to and be doing what I love rather than this shitty job that I hate? Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, or you could be very negative and you could say they don't want you to live your dream because they don't think they could live their dream. And if you show that it's possible, then they don't have any excuses for themselves to step out, right?
Yes, true.
Well, let's talk about the US Trail Running Conference. And
yes, please.
One of the things that I'm fascinated with is that I'm from Europe too. Europe is a lot smaller. It's a lot more densely populated. And especially in Germany, from my back end, especially on the weekends, the stores are closed. So there is a lot of things that people look for to do. And so there are a lot of trade shows and conferences and activities that happen where people can get to. And it doesn't surprise me at all that you started the trail running conference in the US because you come from this European mindset, and I'm just interpreting that as a reason for it being an inspiration for you to do it. But the US is so big and people live all over. It must be a real big challenge in trying to sort of do a centralized conference and trying to include the entire country. How has that been? You've just done your 10th conference. You announced your 11th already next year, again in Mukilteo, which is fantastically convenient for me. So I'm super excited about this because I don't have to travel very far.
Good.
But tell me a little bit, how has it been for you sort of trying to establish something for the entire country when the country is so big and people have to travel from so far and stuff?
Yeah, wow. That's a big question, Matthias.
I know it's a very big question, but that's what I've been always sort of seeing in my head. You can take any piece that you want to and ignore the others.
Yeah. So, one thing that putting the conference together has taught me. Well, it's taught me many things, but one thing in particular, I think, has been that we most of the conference is geared towards race directors, and so people putting on events or races, and so what I found is that we might all have different. We might all live in different parts of the country. We might have different environments. We might have different challenges. We might face different challenges. Excuse me, in terms of so in Colorado, then we're very careful, for example, about if it's muddy, then hey, we don't want to damage the trails, and so we might close a trail to stop any further damage to the trails. But then in other parts of the country, it's like they want to have as many people as possible out on the trails to keep kind of not wildlife but growth and so on the side of the trails down, so that it doesn't require so much maintenance, that kind of thing. And then of course just in terms of land access, is much easier in some parts of the country than others. And then, the availability for private land that has trails on it is much easier in some parts of the country than others. But the common theme is that when we get a group of race directors or event organizers in a room, is that we might all have different backgrounds and challenges, but we all share a common goal, which is creating great race experiences for people to come and enjoy. And I don't think you were there on Wednesday, Matthias, but I started off the conference by talking about that there is so much more to races than being a race director. It's not just about putting on a race for somebody. Really, we're about changing people's lives. That's what that's what putting on a race or an event is changing somebody's life, because somebody will we're still in the position that trail running is growing, so we're attracting more and more trail runners who haven't, a lot of them haven't run a trail before. They might have run roads, but a lot of them haven't run trails, and there's still a whole bunch more people out there who haven't run trails yet, who we haven't got into the sport. And I just think it's such an exciting time that we're going through right now with the sport, because the trails are such an important place for people to enjoy. And of course, a lot of people enjoy walking them, and so you've been out walking with your wife this morning, but I've met certainly a lot of people walking on the trails who say things like, it's like this trail's hard walking. How are you running it? And I'm like, well, come with me, come and enjoy it. Just take a few strides with me, just take a few steps, and it's like inevitably they'll kind of say, oh no, that's not for me, and it's like, yes, you can, and it's so it's really exciting that we have that opportunity to attract people to running trails. And of course, with COVID, the tragedy of COVID is that so many people, sadly, we lost as a result of the disease. But it's like I also think that we it gave a lot of people a chance to kind of stop and assess their lives. And talking about doing jobs that people don't enjoy doing, then a lot of people made the decision, hey, I don't want to keep doing this anymore. Um, and so packed in their work and came off the employment register and the but then I think having the opportunity to spend more time in nature because they weren't working or whatever was happening, and then kind of that realization that that like, hey, my health is actually a really important thing. We I we probably all know somebody at some kind of connection, through the 7 degrees, who lost somebody through COVID, um, and so it really kind of brings home that taking kind of personal responsibility for our health is a really wise investment, and to continue to work and stress ourselves, doing things we don't enjoy doing, is just counterproductive for us as human beings. Even though it might pay the bills. But yeah, so I think trail running for me is just such a that's where we came from. If you think back to our ancestors, then when we were running down prey, so that kind of run to extinction or run to exhaustion, sorry, for animals that we were chasing, and we were primarily running those animals on animal trails, and so it's just, I mean, that's one thing that I really get connected with whenever, not necessarily running down animals, but just thinking about when I get on trails, and is just kind of thinking about our ancestors and where they came from. And like this is the closest thing we have, probably, to kind of enjoying the experience that our ancestors had, but in a very different environment. So it's just, yeah, I think trail running is, will continue to grow in popularity. I just think it's such a really, really attractive sport. We already know the physiology, the adaptations that people have from running, and the health benefits that brings. But it's like, I just think kind of trail running is really good for our body, and heart, and but then running in nature is so good. Not only that, but then also our mind, soul, and spirit as well. So it's like, that's the thing for me, is like just getting back to nature is just again so liberating. That connection to our true selves, and yeah, I just love it, and it's it. So getting back to your question, then it's like, I mean, that's where I think we all, whether we're race directors or trail runners, I think we all have that commonality of once I came to Colorado as a road runner. My wife and I came to Colorado as road runners, and coming from England, and I did a bit of cross country, but nothing much very seriously. But once we started running trails, it was like, oh my God, why did I not know about this before? And we can't turn the clock back, so there's no there's no sense in regretting what we haven't done. But yeah, I mean, since then, as soon as we started running trails, and it was like, okay, I don't really like running roads anymore. And so now of course I know that the trails and softer ground is much more kinder to our bodies, especially aging bodies too. So for myself, it's like, would I rather go run 26.2 on a road or a road system, or a 26.2 on a trail? And it's like, I know which I would rather choose.
I would rather run 50 on a
Okay, there you
trail
go.
than 26 on the road.
Yes,
Right?
indeed, indeed.
In many
Yes,
ways. So, I was only in a Magaltier at your conference for a couple
yeah,
days. Your conference was jam-packed with super intense, dense, and important
yeah,
conversations. How did you bring all of these important pieces
yeah,
together? Because yeah, I mean, it was so dense. And I'm saying that in a really, really
yeah.
positive way. Like, I think
Thank you.
people, I did not expect it. I've been to lots of different conferences, and usually there are like one or two sessions a day which are good, and the rest is sort of kind of fluffy filler. But you'd basically cut out all the fluffy filler, and you had one really important session after another. And so people get a lot out of it. So is that, I mean, obviously that's your intention. How did you put this all together? Like, talk me a little bit through kind of your kind of, yeah, your process and how you kind of put these pieces
Yeah,
together.
yeah. So, Matthias, thank you. That's a really great question. I love that. So, you know, and you mentioned the word intention, and so I since 2019, I've made some changes to the conference, and one of them is to set out with a clear intention. Up till 2019, I think I was kind of more as a kind of more as a I want to call it a facilitator. So I didn't have so much intention, certainly. And then in 2019, I decided to create a theme each year for the conference. 2019 was the theme was diversity, equity, and inclusion, um, and I just really felt that there was, having had conversations with folks like Joe Gray, for example, he's been really outspoken about the lack of runners of color, black runners in the sport, and if looking around at the majority of races, then we can see that there's still underrepresentation, um, and so I that was my theme, and so I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out, but I knew that my intention was to attract more African American, more black runners. I wanted to have Native American, indigenous runners. I wanted to have Asian runners. I wanted to have Latino runners. I wanted to have also runners who were maybe adaptive runners, blind runners, deaf runners. I mean, just every underrepresented group as far as possible that I could think of. I intended to create the space for them to have a seat at the table, a chair at the table, and so that started in 2019, and it's been growing organically since then. And so this year, I didn't achieve everything that I wanted, but in many respects, I achieved again far more than my dreams were. So yeah, it was. You're right. It was jam packed with really top class content, top class contributors and panelists and speakers, and I'm again very grateful for for the people that I've connected with. But I think again it's like I many of the people that contributed to that content were there as a result of my either my connection with somebody they know, or that I asked them directly to be there, and that has worked really, really well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, for sure. That's how the sausage is
yeah,
made, right?
exactly.
Networking
Yeah,
and having really good connection. and being able to follow through, right? I mean, you can only ask so many times for favors. If you yourself don't hold up your
Right.
end, right, then they'll drop
Yeah.
off, right? So the fact that you create this platform and you give people a chance to speak but connect and really get an audience together, I mean, I think that speaks volumes about people wanting to continue to work
Right.
with you on this,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. It's been, again, an amazing journey. To um, when I when I first started the conference back in 2013, then I had never put on a conference before. I had no idea um, what what I was letting myself in for, and I'll be honest here. I also thought to myself, why me? Why why am I being, because somebody did step up and say, we think you'd be really good at doing this. Would you be interested in taking this on? And so, and I actually shared this kind of piece with one of the panelists that was there at the conference on Thursday morning, um, and I shared this piece about why me, and but then I got to a point where I kind of took a step back from being, I guess, I don't want to call myself a victim, but I think in that situation, I maybe was being a little bit kind of like a helpless victim to some extent. But it was taking a step backwards from it. Then it was like, okay, it's like, I'm passionate about trail running. Okay, that's a really really important piece of this. Again, it's like if you're not passionate about trail running, then putting together a conference is maybe not going to work well. Um, and so I'm really passionate about trail running. I'm connected with, at the stage that I started this. Then I'm connected with quite a few people as well. Um, and some of these people know other people within the community and so on. So I'm just like, and I'm also living in this place that is like a paradise for trail runners. Living in Estes Park, we were on the outskirts of Rocky Mountain National Park. Rocky Mountain National Park has 355 miles of trails in it, and it's like incredible climate and clean air quality. Although that's not been so great some of the past years with fires and air quality from there, but yeah, just amazing. So I was like, you know what? It's like this is my job. This is my actually I'm the perfect person, you know. And then the other thing that I thought was, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this for like 50 years or something, so maybe my role here is to get this going, to take it in a certain direction, grow it as far as I can, and then my job is maybe to hand this on to somebody else, who can take it even further and grow it, continue to grow it. So I was very much like, okay, this is for me. Um, this is a good fit for me, and yeah, I definitely, I I just think it's such a, the trail running community is, I think, one of the best sporting communities that there is. It's like I can't imagine, and maybe I'm talking bullshit here, but maybe I can't imagine. I'm just kind of thinking of times when I'm just thinking of Western States 100, and having somebody who finishes absolute first in that race comes back out and runs in with the person who's finishing last, at the 30-hour cutoff. And I can't think of many other sports where that would happen. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you have the first and the last, and they end up coming in together, and okay, there might be 15 hours between the difference in terms of finishing time, but they're but they still share this common bond in terms of it's the experience of running in nature, of challenging yourself, and just having these incredibly, amazing experiences in nature's beauty and wilderness, and that sews us all together. So, were you there for at the start of Friday morning, or?
I actually wasn't there for the start because I had to have a meeting with my film festival team because they had just
Okay.
given me the job, and
Oh yeah.
I haven't actually haven't had actually a chance to actually meet them in person. Everything had been done over Zoom, so we had to have a
Oh
meeting
yeah.
before we dove in.
So each day, so the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 3 days of the conference, each day that we, I actually the idea came to me literally kind of on the first morning, and then I followed it through to the other subsequent mornings. But each day we had an opening circle, and so we got everybody into a circle, but I got everybody to link arms. So that we all had arms connected with each other, and then and this came to me literally the first morning that I was like, this is such an important thing to remember about our trail running community, because we had people in the opening circle each day who were maybe from different parts of the States, or from Canada, or from we had from Alaska as well, but from all over the States. And I was like, the thing about our community is that we might spend time apart from each other, but because of what we all share, we have this common bond, this common link. And I was like, this is our strength. This is what we share as a community. And I really wanted to kind of remind people about that, and just the the kind of opportunity to kind of feel that within the space at the conference, and it was super powerful. And of course, we also did a land acknowledgement each day. And I felt that was a really important piece as well, to honor, the peoples that were in this country, or sorry, in that country, because I'm in England now, but in that country before we were there, so the indigenous peoples, and we're, the rest of us are just immigrants, um, so to honor them and to give thanks to them um, uh, for for sharing their land, and of course that I mean, there's a whole nother political piece there in terms of the lands being stolen, but it was I think such a that creating that intention, I think, is the important piece. Going back to your original question, that it's I think it's so important to we had three days at the conference. First day was on business and community, and we spent a lot of time focusing on how we could help race directors and event organizers from a business perspective. So we did some actual business coaching, so literally some professional development for the race directors and the event organizers there. And then Thursday was diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then Friday was climate and sustainability, and I kind of saw those as the kind of three key core subjects that are really kind of the areas where we really need to focus as a sport. And then, like you said, I mean, we just ended up jam packed.
Nah, it was really good. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like you were wasting your time
Right.
there for sure,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was really, you were getting a lot of out of it. And to be quite honest, I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for that much really hard hitting content. Um, and so it was really really great. Looking into the
Yeah.
future for you, um, what's your hope and your vision for the trail running
Oh
conference?
wow. Okay.
I'm looking at our time and I'm trying to
Yeah,
wrap it up. And usually I'm sort of starting and have a conversation, an easy one, which is about, hey, what's your personal plan? But you already talked about how much you're in
yeah,
transition and you don't really know, and there's a lot at play. So, of course, I don't want to put you on the spot with your personal life. So let's talk about the trail running conference. You announced
yeah.
year 11, right? You already announced that the next conference is going to be happening. It's going to be in the same absolute beautiful location. Hopefully we're going to get a little bit more clear sky so we actually can take advantage of being so
I hope
close
so.
to the water. Right? And I'm not talking like practical. If you rearrange the panels,
No.
this doesn't matter. It's really about, yeah, it's like, what role does the trail running conference for you play in the larger world of trail running, both in the country and internationally? And I know this is a massive, massive question, because so much is changing, right? With UTMB Ironman entering, we see that this growth comes with an increased
Yeah.
commercialization. We're seeing lot of changes on the upper echelon, and then on the kind of entry level, more race directors are coming up, more races are coming up, offering kind of new opportunities for runners, and gear is getting better. So there's a lot at flux. None of it scares me. None of it. I'm not an old school runner who says somebody's moving my cheese, everything is panicky, right? But you're playing. There are some old people who think
Sure.
that way, right? Old meaning having been in the sport for a long time. I don't feel that way, but sort of you have a unique place where you're creating an experience that's not a race, that it's not focused on entertainment like a film festival would
Sure.
be, for
Yeah.
example, right? So you are really sort of in a position where you can talk about the business side of it, like the meat of it all, but you are doing it in a way that is still incredibly inspirational and incredible powerful, and not just full of spreadsheets. So talk a little bit about kind of the sort of the vision for you for the future for the trail
Yeah,
run
yeah. Well,
conference.
thank you, thank you. So, and yes, we are returning to Mukilteo, October the 18th to the 20th. And as you said, yeah, I hope the air quality will be better than it was this year. But we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. But yeah, so I'm really excited about returning to the Pacific Northwest. I think I'm really happy that we did a good job with connecting with many race directors from the local community, many trail runners in the local community, and I think we can, as a result of, as you said, from the inspirational content that we created this year, I think that will just momentum will grow and will attract an even bigger audience for next year. But one of the things. One of the things that I'd like to set out is for next year is some core some targets. So to set out some goals which for the sport I think would be things that would be really useful items to set out and for us to aim for it. So things like having I just think from a DEI perspective, then to set out to increase and actually have some measured goals and this is one one problem, one challenge, if you like, for the sport, because we haven't necessarily got great data in terms of inclusivity for the sport. We know that looking around, one of our keynote speaker went and ran a race this year, 50. I think it was a 50K race, and he's a black runner, and he said, and there's several hundred runners in this race. He was the only black runner, either male or female, there. Um, and so he just described the situation, the vision that he had of being the only black person there, and he was like, that's just one example of the challenge we face in the sport. And so I think we need to set up some some mechanisms for measuring inclusivity, because it's one of the things that I've done with the conference is when people register, I also check, so they have a if they want to fill this in, then they can check whether they're African American or black, whether Asian, Hispanic, or so on. So as a result of that data, then I can see each year that we're increasing the number of African American participants, increasing the number of Hispanic participants, that we're increasing the number of female participants or female identifying participants. And from now onwards, we're going to be increasing the number of non-binary participants as well. So first, in order to measure that we're creating change, then we have to have some data about the sport to move it forwards. So that's one thing, but then to set out some goals to say, okay, not only do we need to know where we are now, but then what do we want to do? Do we want to, increase diversity in these groups by 25% in the next 12 months, 24 months? And so to actually, but I think that's potentially more of a community conversation, rather than necessarily kind of me making a decision. It's like that. I don't think that's my place. But on the other hand, I think I'd love to be a part of a conversation where those things are happening and being talked about. And so if I can help start that off, then that would be amazing. And then I think the same thing applies with the participation in terms of women. That we're we had a presentation last year at the conference where some data was shared from a survey about sexual harassment and assault on the trails, and we have a problem. And unfortunately, there are stories around. There's good information which suggests that that some race directors and organizers in the sport are unfortunately in a position where they're harassing and assaulting female runners, and that, but they're continuing to do that, and they're still in the same role where they're allowed to do that, and so as a sport, we shouldn't be allowing that to happen. That's not being inclusive. That's just sweeping this under the carpet because it's uncomfortable. And so I think we need to get uncomfortable. And we need to be able to say to people that, hey, it's well proven that this guy is this person is not being respectful to women. And so let's put the word out, and as a sport, we should maybe think about ways to stop that happening. Yeah. So I think that's a really important piece as well. And then thinking about climate, that we as a sport, I think we need to. There's no reason why every race in the world doesn't aim to be zero carbon or better, and to aim to be there in like 1-2 years. It's not a big ask to have that happen, and so
if we take the travel out of the equation.
Well, even if we take the travel out of the equation, then we can work with ways. And this was one of the conversations we had during the conference. Was we can work initially. Then if we're all driving electric cars, then that's going to make a whole big difference. If we're all flying electric planes, then that's going to make a whole big difference. But in the meantime, we can do things like build in offsets to the registration process. So I did that last year with the conference. So operationally last year, the conference was carbon negative. So I actually purchased more offsets than the emissions that we created. For the conference this year, then we will be completely operationally negative. So I added a small surcharge in for registration. Excuse me, which will then cover the personal travel for everybody who participated in the conference, and then the conference will cover that. And so my aim is to be carbon negative for the 2022 conference completely, including all the travel as well. So it's not. It's not rocket science. There is there's a process that we can help other race directors to go through, but I think it's really important that as a sport that we take leadership in this area, and of course by doing that we can also help encourage individuals, the individual runners who come to the races to also take personal responsibility for their emissions and their footprint as well. So yeah, there's a lot of really exciting things that I think we can do as a sport, and part of my goal for the conference is to be one of the places where this happens, and I mentioned this, and you might not have been there at the conference for this particular piece, but I think it's really important that we tend to live our lives in Western civilization feeling very comfortable, and I think it's time for us to get uncomfortable in lots of different ways. And the great thing about this as a coach is that for athletes that I'm working with, then, and as an athlete myself, then we all know that we make the biggest breakthroughs in terms of our athletic careers when we get uncomfortable. If we always aim to be comfortable, then we pretty much stay where we are. Yeah, it's only when we get uncomfortable that we make breakthroughs and make progress. And so I think as a sport, we need to have those uncomfortable conversations. And I think it makes a ton of sense.
It does make a ton of sense, and it's a perfect way to finish off this conversation. It's so we can both comfortably go to our next meetings. Let's be uncomfortable. That's where the breakthrough happened. That's a perfect metaphor, perfect mantra, if you will, for us as individuals, as we're training, as we're out there, as we're digging in for work, but also for this conference. Because yes, this is, I think, where truly the special things happen, inspirational for us as individuals, that we're going to this conference and what we're taking back then home as race directors, as runners, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, how we are letting that influence our life. Terry, this was an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for calling in from England. I wish you all the best in settling in and getting reacquainted with your old new home, and let's stay in touch. I'm curious where you end up, what the next phases of your life may be.
Yeah, I would definitely, Matthias. I would definitely keep you posted, and thank you so much for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, and to get uncomfortable on the air. I think yeah, I really appreciate you you reaching out, and I'm also so touched that you were so impressed with the conference as well, and thank you for being a part of it and participating there as well. And I also look forward to hearing more about the Trail Running Film Festival, and as you move into your new role and develop things on that. But it was great to kind of see and hear the response that you received on that from the conference participants. So I'm excited about that for you.
Absolutely. I'll be reaching out. I hope you can bring the film festival to England.
Well, that's a great possibility. We're certainly, we're in a great position here, and I'm certainly surrounded by lots of runners. I'm also going to the Run Show, which takes place in England. It started out in England, and then they came to the US 2022 this year, and so I'll be at the Run Show in England in January, I think. So we'll have a conversation before I go to that, and perhaps there's something I can do to sow some seeds there for you as well. So yeah, we'll look forward to it.
Fantastic. Terry, have a great rest of your evening. I'll be in touch.